When the dust settled from UFC 200 in 2016, what if I told you that in the co-main event of UFC 300, two Chinese fighters would fight each other for a championship belt? At that time, the UFC had never held an event in mainland China. Tough China was a flop, and the most successful fighter from China at the time was Li Jingliang, who was a fight night prelim fighter at best with a 3-2 record. UFC 300 is a testament to how good Chinese MMA has come by 2024. In the co-main event of one of the biggest MMA events of all time, two Chinese fighters, strawweight champion Zhang Weili and challenger Yan Xiaonan, fight in the battle for China. I'm gonna work through each fighter's game, what each needs to do to win, and who I'm picking to win and how. But first, why not take a second to subscribe to the MMA Ecosystem channel? Zhang Weili is starting to remind me a little bit of Georges St. Pierre's martial arts path. A little bit. GSP started primarily as a striker, using his Kyokushin karate to outpoint opponents on the feet. Around the time he won the belt the second time, he shifted to a more wrestling and grappling focus and began dominating opponents on the ground. Zhang's best work has historically come on the feet, producing epic fights against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, but ahead of the second Rose fight, she brought in coaches like Henry Cejudo and Josh Hinger and has become a terror on the mat ever since. She submitted Carla Esparza, then pulverized Amanda Lemos on the ground over 5 rounds. The takeaway, there's truly no safe space against Zhang Weili anymore. Zhang's foundations are in striking like Kung Fu and Sanda, but she also has roots in wrestling. For the most part, Zhang Weili is as complete of a fighter as you'll find at strawweight. She adapts specifically to each opponent and focuses hard on her weaknesses between each fight. She has both a consistent team of coaches that follow her around, as well as local gyms that she rotates between to have coaching that is both intimate and fresh. On the feet, Zhang is very mobile, bouncing around on her feet and throwing in high volume combinations. She's got a dozen different strikes that she can inflict serious damage with. However, it's been 2 fights since we saw an all-out striking attack from Zhang, and it's getting harder to even make generalizations of this is Zhang Weili's game when she adapts to each opponent. You saw this front and center against Amanda Lemos. On the feet, Zhang hardly threw a punch the whole fight, in contrast to her performances against JJ. Why was that? Because she didn't want to get lured into punching exchanges where Lemos could land a missile of a right hand. On the feet, Zhang used her kicks to wear Lemos down and used punches pretty much only to set up takedowns. I'll dig deeper into the takedowns of Zhang in a minute, but for now, we can say that the strengths of Zhang Weili include high volume, impactful striking combinations, strength and conditioning, wrestling, and what I like about that is that she never throws a naked takedown. She sets things up really well, and overall may just be the most well-rounded strawweight on the UFC roster. Yan Xiaonan comes from a Sanda background, which is a Chinese martial art that translates really well into MMA. When you think of Yan Xiaonan's game, you think of speed. The girl's got lightning in her hands, and she typically starts really fast. She can slow down a little bit if the fight goes the distance, but typically has a strong first round. You saw that both in the Marina Rodriguez and the Mackenzie Dern fights. Yan also has tremendous striking defense. You see her keep excellent distance and move away from punches effectively. In fact, this was the one fight statistic that Yan has Zhang beat in. Yan's 61% striking defense against Zhang's 53%. Yan builds her game around the jab and produces a steady diet of combinations and low kicks for typically high volume striking fights. If the fight goes to the ground, she's rarely in an offensive position, but if she does have to fight off her back, her submission defense is really great. Yan's game is more sophisticated, honestly, than some have made it. She adapts both her stance and micro strategies from opponent to opponent. Against Dern, she kept a really low stance and threw wilder, wider punches, and against Andrade, she really just had to stay sharp, keep a high guard, and counter effectively when Andrade charged in. Andrade definitely underestimated Yan, thinking she could just charge in and take her out, not having to worry about her strikes. Zhang can't underestimate Yan either and get reckless. So here's how I would summarize Yan's strengths. Got a really fast jab, excellent distance management, chopping low kicks, a speedy fighter throughout her whole game and has really good reflexes, and is a fast starter as well. So Is her striking enough to win a fight or get a knockout? I wouldn't necessarily call Yan a knockout artist by any means, but she does possess the power if the situations are right. The assertion that Yan poses no threat whatsoever to Zhang, I don't think is true. In addition to her jab and low kicks, I've seen her use the left hook, side kick, and a multitude of counters pretty effectively. She staggered Dern with a left hook and dropped Jessica Andrade with a right hook, moving backwards, which led to a TKO finish. This was Yan's last and best performance. Andrade was also pretty wild and reckless, so Yan countered that aggression with precision and perfectly timed counters. Watch this ending sequence of the fight. Andrade is famous for barreling forward with punches right here, and Yan countered her with that right hook moving backwards, finishing it off with hammer fist on the ground. The whole fight up to this point had been unfolding similarly to that, where Andrade was barreling forward with punches. Yan was keeping really good distance, sliding just out of reach from Andrade, peppering her with those shots. And there you see she loves to come over the punches of her opponent with like a right hook or a left hook. She does that in other fights as well. And it's the placement. Everything is right about this knockout shot. You even see Yan moving her head off to the side to land the punch. The balance, the distance, the timing, the power, everything is there. Now, I don't think Zhang is going to come at Yan this wild, but if there has been a knock on Zhang's striking, it's that she can leave openings too often. She can sometimes leave herself open to be countered by throwing lots of high volume combinations, and can also fall into the habit of rolling her hands. Look here at the Amanda Lemos fight. As Zhang bounces up and down as she often does, she also moves her hands up and down. This pattern was actually timed by Lemos a few times to land her right hand, which historically is her most powerful weapon. Now I want to zoom in on Zhang's takedown game from the Lemos fight and hypothesize how effective it'll be against Yan, assuming she's going to try to get Yan down often. I recorded all of Zhang's takedowns in the fight to see what kind of entries she prefers, and they were mostly all in the clinch, often using trips. So in round 1, we saw Zhang kick the leg out from Lemos, which knocked her over, and then she pounced. Round 2, she timed an overhand right from Lemos to dip under and then clinch. From there, she tripped and threw Lemos to the ground. And then later in round 2, another clinch and a trip. Round 3, clinch, grabbed a leg, and then turned to the corner. Round 4, she set up a double leg with a punch, and then in round 5, she knocked Lemos to the ground with a straight right hand, then pounced. Later in that same round, another throw from the clinch. So a lot of throws from the clinch. If Yan wants to greatly decrease her chances of being taken down, not only should she be focusing on clinch work, but also footwork to circle out when Zhang tries to push her to the cage. Otherwise, she's going to end up on her back for a lot of this fight. And while Yan's submission defense is good, she can sometimes fall into the trap of hang on and defend rather than improving her position and getting back up. She's probably going to take a lot of damage on the ground from Zhang, but against Lemos, we saw Zhang sometimes give up position or even let Lemos back up to her feet when she focused on damage over maintaining position. With the simple improvement of prioritizing position over offense, Zhang can reduce Yan's chances of escaping back to her feet. I'll be honest, the window for victory for Yan Xiaonan is pretty narrow. She's got to defend Zhang's takedowns and then pressure Zhang on the feet, beat her up with the jab, and counter Zhang with hooks if Zhang charges in with combinations. She should think about the counter knee for the at-distance takedowns of Zhang, but more likely Zhang will try to clinch for the takedown, so Yan needs to give Zhang reasons to hesitate in closing that distance. Both fighters throw a high amount of volume, so if this fight does stay standing, it'll be a war. I think what you'll see out of Zhang is similar to the attack plan for Lemos. She may be willing to engage the striking a bit more against Yan than she did against Lemos, seeing as though Yan doesn't have the nuke of a right hand that Lemos did. The first round I expect to be the closest, as Yan's striking will start strong and she'll have the highest chance of defending takedowns. But look for rounds 2 and 3 to be solid Zhang rounds, securing takedowns and spending a lot of time on top. My prediction is that similar to Carla Esparza, fighting either fighter honestly, we'll see Zhang get the win with a TKO finish on the ground in round 3 as she traps Yan in a compromised position. So there's my prediction. Zhang Weili beats Yan Xiaonan via TKO in round 3. What's your thoughts on the fight? Give me your prediction in the comments below, or any thoughts that you have on the overall video, and we'll see you guys at UFC 300.